The most expensive American TV series in history, The Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power Season 2, is finally here in 2024. The resurrected Sauron aims to conquer the entire Middle-earth, leading to the emergence of the Supreme Dark Lord in this season. The story begins after the battle between Morgoth and the Elves, where Morgoth is defeated and his fate is unknown. Sauron, now second in command, becomes the master of this army of orcs. At this moment, he is plotting to conquer Middle-earth, unaware that his brutal subordinates have already brought about his downfall.
Your only future! Who among you dare say otherwise?
Seeing that he had intimidated everyone, Bardal raised the crown to coronate the new king, but in the next second, the orcs immediately swarmed forward. Although Sauron was incredibly powerful, he soon fell silent as swords continuously pierced his body. Suddenly, Sauron burst into a dazzling white light and a bone-chilling wind swept across all of Mordor. When Adar slowly woke up, he found that Sauron's physical body had disappeared, and the remaining half-orcs had finally regained their freedom. But what everyone didn't know was that a stream of black blood was slowly flowing underground. After an unknown amount of time, an unlucky rat came to the puddle of blood. As the mass of flesh continued to devour, it finally accumulated enough strength to crawl towards the surface. In the snowy landscape, a wealthy man drove by in a carriage, not noticing that the wheels had run over a terrifying monster. Suddenly, a piercing scream echoed. Shortly after, a figure descended from the carriage. It was the newly resurrected Sauron. Having devoured a human, Sauron now possessed a human appearance. At this time, the northern lands were engulfed in war, and the homeless people were preparing to risk crossing the Sea of Death to live on the other side. The kind old man before them worked for the royal family of the Northern Emperor. Persuaded by him, Sauron decided to join the perilous journey across the deep sea. A giant beast had already set its sights on them. At night, Sauron seemed to sense something and was about to warn them when a massive force broke through the ship's cabin, causing chaos. The old man was pinned under a pillar, but Sauron did not rescue him. Instead, he tore off the old man's family crest. Soon, the ship was shattered by the beast's impact, and Sauron fell into the sea, watching as the beast charged towards him.
The next morning, Sauron and a few survivors were floating on the vast ocean. As he looked at the emblem in his hand, a plan for revenge began to form in his mind. Just then, he heard a woman's cry for help. It turned out to be Rael, who had been searching for Sauron for many years. The scene shifts to the end of the first season. Rael finally realizes that Brand is actually Sauron. The Elven King is furious upon learning the truth. However, the sacred tree is about to die completely. If they cannot solve the problem of Sauron and dispel the dark magic, the elves will have to leave Lindon and even abandon Middle-earth. The three newly forged Elven rings possess great power. The Elven King wants to use their power to defeat Sauron, but Elrond understands that these three rings were created under Sauron's guidance, and there must be a huge conspiracy behind them. Seeing that he cannot persuade the Elven King,
the Elven King hurriedly ordered the closure of all ports in Lindon to capture Elrond. Under the cover of night, Elrond quietly arrived at the home of the Elder Círdan, known as the wisest of the elves. After hearing the whole story, Círdan understood that this was Sauron's plan to use the rings to cause division among the elves. The rings must be destroyed immediately. Just then, the sound of horses neighing came from outside. The Elven King had arrived with his soldiers, having guessed that Elrond would seek Círdan's help. However, he was a step too late. Círdan was already on his way to the ocean rift to destroy the rings. Meanwhile, Sauron had arrived in Mordor, which was now ruled by Adar. All the humans in the southern lands had been captured and forced to swear allegiance to Adar, branded with the mark of slaves. Refusal meant certain death. Sauron was soon brought before Adar. Realizing he was isolated and without support, Sauron decided to hide his identity, pretending to be the king of the southern lands. He claimed that after Rael's defeat, the elves, with Sauron's help, had forged a ring with magical power that could turn both orcs and humans into his slaves. If Adar released his people, he would reveal Sauron's location. Adar did not believe him, but the news caused panic among many orcs. That night, after a day of torture, Sauron struggled to pick up a bone from the ground. The next morning, Adar continued to question Sauron's whereabouts, but Sauron claimed he did not know where the real Sauron was. However, he had an advantage that Adar lacked: the elves' trust in his human identity. If Adar let him go, he could lead the elves here and annihilate them all at once. Adar was tempted, but he still wanted Sauron to kneel at his feet and swear allegiance to him. The scene shifts to Círdan arriving at the ocean rift. Just as he was about to throw the ring away, a wave hit, causing the ring to fall back onto the boat. A glimmer of light from the bag immediately caught Círdan's attention, and a look of greed appeared on his face. Meanwhile, the sacred tree in Lindon had completely lost its light. The Elven King gathered everyone to announce that the elves would completely withdraw from Middle-earth. At that moment, Círdan suddenly appeared, wearing the elven ring. Soon, the other two rings were worn by the Elven King and Rael. In the next second, the once dim sacred tree burst into light again.